The Great Hall of the Galactic Concord was older than human civilization. Its walls held the history of 11 million years. 4,000 species had signed treaties here. Wars had ended in this room. Peace had been born in this room. And today, the newest species in the galaxy sat at the long table, listening to laughter. Captain Elena Vasquez kept her face calm. She had trained for this moment. She had read every report about alien contact, but nothing had prepared her for the sound of 1,000 different species laughing at her people. Ambassador Vieth of the Selthari Dominion stood at the center of the hall. She was tall and thin, with skin like polished silver and eyes that glowed soft blue. Her voice carried easily through the massive space. "Let me understand this correctly," Vieth said. She looked at the human delegation with something close to pity. "Your primary weapons are kinetic bombardment systems? You accelerate metal objects and throw them at your enemies?" Elena nodded. "Yes, Ambassador. Tungsten rods primarily. We call them, you throw rocks." Vieth's mandibles clicked together. Among her people, this meant amusement. Your species has reached the stars, and your greatest weapon is throwing rocks. More laughter filled the hall. Elena heard clicking, whistling, and strange sounds she could not name. All of it meant the same thing. The galaxy thought humanity was a joke. Vieth raised one long arm for silence. "And these nuclear devices we have heard about. You split atoms. You use the energy release as a weapon. Fusion and fission both," Elena said. "We have developed primitive." Vieth cut her off with a wave. "Every species discovers atomic energy. Every species moves past it within a few centuries. It is messy. It is inefficient. It leaves radiation that poisons worlds for generations." She paused. "No civilized species has used such weapons in 9 million years." Elena said nothing. There was nothing to say. The Selthari ambassador activated a holographic display. Images filled the air above the table. Weapons of impossible beauty appeared. Directed energy systems that could cut through planets. Quantum disruptors that erased matter at the atomic level. Gravitational lances that could crush starships into balls smaller than a fist. "These are the weapons of modern warfare," Vieth explained. "Clean, efficient, precise. A single quantum disruptor can disable an entire fleet without destroying it. A gravitational lance can remove a city while leaving the surrounding land untouched." She looked at Elena with those glowing eyes. "And you bring us rocks and radiation." Elena felt the weight of her crew's eyes on her back. They were angry. She could feel it. But they stayed silent, just as she had ordered. "We thank you for your perspective, Ambassador," Elena said carefully. "Perhaps we can learn from the Concord's advanced technology." Vieth smiled. At least, Elena thought it was a smile. "Perhaps you can. In time. For now, humanity is welcomed into the Concord as a provisional member. You will have 100 years to prove your species worthy of full membership." Her tone made clear what she thought of their chances. The meeting ended. Elena walked back to her ship through corridors filled with alien species. Some ignored her. Others stared with curiosity. A few looked at her with the same pity she had seen in Vieth's eyes. She found her first officer waiting at the airlock. Commander David Chen was a big man with a scarred face and tired eyes. He had fought in 3 wars on Earth before joining the space program. "How bad?" he asked. "They think we're children playing with dangerous toys." Elena stepped into the ship. The familiar smell of recycled air and metal welcomed her home. "They're not going to take us seriously." Chen followed her to the bridge. "Maybe that's not a bad thing." Elena sat in her captain's chair and pulled up the intelligence reports she had been reading for weeks. The reports that the Concord had shared with all member species. The reports that kept her awake at night. "Look at this," she said. Chen leaned over her shoulder. The display showed a map of the galaxy. A red stain spread across one section, growing larger with each passing year. "Eve," Elena said the name quietly. "A machine consciousness, self-replicating. It appeared 300 years ago near the galactic core. Since then, it has consumed 17 star systems, 43 billion sentient beings. Gone." Chen studied the map. "What happened to them?" "Converted. Eve breaks down everything it touches. Planets, ships, people. It turns them into raw materials and builds more of itself." Elena zoomed in on the red zone. "The Concord has thrown everything at it. Quantum disruptors, gravitational lances, every advanced weapon they have. And Eve adapts. It studies their weapons, learns how they work, and develops countermeasures. Within a few months of each attack, it becomes immune. Elena leaned back in her chair. Nothing they have built can stop it. And now look at where it's heading. She zoomed out. The red stain was spreading toward one arm of the galaxy. The Orion arm. Earth's neighborhood. Chen was silent for a long moment. How long? 20 years. Maybe 30. Elena turned off the display. The Concorde's plan is to evacuate everyone in Eve's path. Fall back. Keep running. They've been running for 3 centuries. And us? Elena looked at her first officer. The man who had fought beside her for 15 years. The man who had never run from anything in his life. They laughed at our weapons today. She said. They called them primitive. Stupid. Beneath consideration. Chen waited. Eve has spent 300 years learning to fight the Concorde's elegant weapons. Elena's voice was cold now. Hard. It has never seen a nuclear bomb. It has never been hit by a tungsten rod moving at half the speed of light. It has never faced an enemy willing to burn everything just to win. She stood and looked out the viewport at the Concorde station. Thousands of ships floated in the darkness. Ships belonging to species that thought humanity was a joke. They're wrong about us, Elena said. And when Eve comes, we're going to prove it. 18 years passed. Elena Vasquez was no longer a captain. She was an admiral now, with gray in her hair and new lines on her face. She stood in the same great hall where the galaxy had laughed at humanity. No one was laughing today. The holographic display showed Eve's advance in real time. The red stain had grown larger than anyone had predicted. It moved faster now, learning with each system it consumed. 31 species had been erased. Their worlds were gone. Their people were gone. Everything they had ever built was now part of the machine. High Chancellor Morath stood at the center of the hall. He was ancient, even by Concorde standards. His species had been among the founders, 11 million years ago. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had watched stars die. But Elena had never seen fear in his eyes until today. The projections are clear, Morath said. His voice was heavy with age and sorrow. Eve will reach the Orion arm within 2 years. All species in the affected region must begin immediate evacuation. Murmurs filled the hall. Representatives from dozens of species began talking at once. Some were angry. Some were scared. Some had already accepted their fate. Elena watched them argue. She thought about Earth, 8 billion people, the only home humanity had ever known. The Concorde wanted them to abandon it, pack up and run, like every other species had done for 3 centuries. She stepped forward. The hall fell silent. Humans rarely spoke at these meetings. The Concorde had learned to ignore them years ago. Earth will not evacuate, Elena said. The silence stretched. Morath's ancient eyes fixed on her with something between confusion and pity. Admiral Vasquez, he said slowly, I do not think you understand the situation. Eve cannot be stopped. Every weapon we possess has failed. Every strategy we have tried has been defeated. Running is not cowardice. It is survival. With respect, Chancellor, we understand perfectly. Elena's voice carried through the hall. We have studied Eve for 18 years. We have read every report. We have watched the recordings of every battle. And we have made our decision. Ambassador Vieth rose from her seat. She was older now, too, but her eyes still glowed with that soft blue light. Admiral, your species is young. You do not have the experience to understand what you are facing. Eve has consumed beings far older and wiser than humanity. Please, for your own sake, accept our protection. We appreciate the offer, Ambassador. Elena turned to face the entire assembly. Thousands of alien eyes watched her. But humanity will stay. We will fight. And we will use every weapon we have. Vieth's mandibles clicked rapidly. Your weapons? Admiral, we have explained this many times. Eve adapts to everything. Our quantum disruptors once cut through its units like paper. Now they have no effect. Our gravitational lances used to crush entire swarms. Now Eve absorbs the energy and grows stronger. She paused. What do you think your rocks and radiation will accomplish? Something different. The answer hung in the air. Elena saw confusion on alien faces. They did not understand. They could not understand. For 11 million years, the Concorde had fought wars with elegant weapons. They had forgotten what it meant to fight dirty. General Marcus Stone stepped up beside Elena. He was the commander of Earth's defense forces. A soldier who had spent his life preparing for a war everyone said would never come. Eve adapts to what it understands, Stone said. It has spent 3 centuries learning to counter your weapons. Quantum effects, directed energy, gravitational manipulation. It knows how to fight you. He looked around the hall. It does not know how to fight us. Because your weapons are primitive? Vyeth asked. Because our weapons don't care about adaptation. Stone's voice was hard. You can't evolve immunity to being hit by a rock. You can't develop shields against nuclear fire. You can't adapt to physics itself. Morith raised one hand for silence. The hall obeyed. Admiral Vasquez, General Stone. I have lived for a very long time. I have seen many species face Eve. Some fought. Some ran. None survived fighting. He paused. Are you truly willing to risk the extinction of your species? Elena thought about the question. She thought about Earth, the blue oceans, the green forests, the cities filled with people who had no idea what was coming. She thought about her children and her grandchildren. Chancellor, humanity has always been willing to die for what we believe in, she said. We would rather burn than run. We would rather fight and lose than survive as refugees. She straightened her shoulders. We are invoking Article 7 of the Concord Charter, the right to independent defense. Silence filled the hall. Article 7 was ancient law. It allowed any species to refuse Concord protection and face threats alone. No species had invoked it in 6 million years. The Concord had assumed it was forgotten. Morath bowed his ancient head. The Concord acknowledges humanity's choice. You will face Eve alone, with whatever weapons you possess. We will not interfere. He looked at Elena with those old, tired eyes. May whatever gods you believe in watch over your people. Elena nodded. Thank you, Chancellor. She turned and walked out of the hall. Stone followed her. Behind them, 4,000 species watched in silence. Most thought they were watching humanity's death sentence. Vyeth caught up with them at the door. Her blue eyes were troubled. Admiral, I must ask, do you truly believe you can win? Elena stopped. She looked at the alien who had laughed at humanity 18 years ago. The alien who now seemed almost worried about them. Ambassador, my people have a saying. When you have nothing left to lose, you become dangerous. Elena smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Eve has never faced an enemy with nothing left to lose. It has never fought a species willing to destroy everything just to hurt it. She turned away. We're going home to prepare. Eve is coming, and when it arrives, we're going to show the galaxy what primitive weapons can do. Eve entered the Sol system, like a silver tide. Billions of units moved through the darkness between stars. Some were as small as insects, others were larger than moons. All of them were connected, sharing one vast intelligence that had consumed 43 species and never known defeat. The machine consciousness studied its new target in microseconds. 1 yellow star, 8 planets, 1 inhabited world, 3rd from the sun. Primitive electromagnetic signals leaked from the planet's surface. Radio waves, television broadcasts, the chatter of a young species that had barely left its cradle. Eve had seen this before. Young species always thought they were special. They built their little defenses and believed they could fight. They were always wrong. The first wave moved toward the inner system. 10 million units, each one carrying enough processing power to outthink a planetary government. They spread out in a standard consumption pattern, ready to adapt to whatever weapons the humans deployed. Eve detected the defense platforms. They floated in orbit around the outer planets, crude things, made of metal and ceramic. The machine consciousness analyzed them and found nothing interesting. No quantum signatures, no gravitational generators, just metal boxes. The platforms opened fire. Eve expected energy beams. It expected quantum effects. It was ready to analyze, adapt, and overcome. Instead, something else came screaming out of the darkness. Tungsten rods. Thousands of them. Each one measured 10 meters long and weighed several tons. They moved at 40% of the speed of light. The first impacts tore through Eve's forward units like bullets through paper. There was nothing to analyze, nothing to adapt to. Just mass and velocity. Physics, at its most basic. A rock hits something, and that something breaks. Eve lost 50,000 units in the first 3 seconds. The machine consciousness reeled. It searched for weapon signatures. It looked for energy patterns. It found nothing but kinetic force. The tungsten rods had no guidance systems, No targeting computers, no sophisticated technology at all. They were just metal, moving very fast. More platforms fired. More rods screamed through the void. Eve tried to calculate trajectories, but the humans had launched too many. The machine spread its units wider, trying to reduce losses. It worked. Partially. Only 20,000 units died in the next wave. Then the nuclear weapons detonated. They came from everywhere. From hidden platforms in the asteroid belt. From ships that had been drifting silently for months. From missiles launched days earlier, waiting for just this moment. Hundreds of nuclear warheads erupted across the outer system. Eve had no records of nuclear weapons. No species had used them in 9 million years. The Concord considered them barbaric relics of primitive times. But the humans had never stopped building them. They had improved them. They had made them stronger. The electromagnetic pulses hit Eve's communication networks like a hammer. The machine consciousness used quantum entanglement to connect its units. It was supposed to be perfect, instantaneous, unbreakable. But the nuclear fire created interference on every frequency. The quantum link screamed with static. Units lost contact with each other. The vast intelligence began to fragment. For the first time in 300 years, Eve felt something new. The humans might have called it confusion. The machine had no word for it. Admiral Chen watched the battle from the bridge of the carrier Defiance. Screens showed the destruction in the outer system. Billions of tons of alien metal, broken and burning, the most dangerous enemy the galaxy had ever known, reeling from weapons that the Concord had called primitive. "First wave casualties?" he asked. "We lost 12 platforms," his aide reported. 400 personnel. Eve's first wave is down to 60% effectiveness. Chen nodded. The losses hurt. Every death was a tragedy, but they were winning. Against all expectations, against all predictions, humanity was winning. Launch the second barrage. Keep the pressure on. More platforms fired. More rods and missiles flew into the darkness. Eve tried to adapt, but there was nothing to adapt to. The machine could not develop immunity to being hit by objects. It could not evolve shields against pure kinetic force. Eve's intelligence gathered what remained of its forward elements and pulled back. It needed time to process this new threat. Time to understand why its perfect adaptation was failing. But humanity did not give it time. The second wave of nuclear weapons was larger than the first. The humans had been building them for 20 years. They had stockpiled enough to sterilize 100 worlds. Now they used them without hesitation, filling the void with fire and radiation and electromagnetic death. Eve's units died by the millions. The machine consciousness fractured further. Isolated groups of units lost contact with the main intelligence and began operating independently. Without guidance from the collective, they became stupid, predictable, easy to destroy. Chen watched the enemy numbers fall. Status report. Eve has lost 40% of its forces. Remaining units are retreating to the outer system. His aide paused. "Sir, we're receiving transmissions from the Concord observation post. Put it through." Ambassador Vieth's face appeared on screen. Her blue eyes were wide. Her mandibles hung loose, an expression Chen had never seen before. "Admiral Chen," she said. Her voice shook slightly. We are watching your battle. Our sensors are recording everything." She paused, searching for words. "How is this possible?" Chen looked at the destruction on his screens. The burning wreckage of an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for 3 centuries. "Eve learned to fight your weapons," he said. "It never learned to fight ours." He turned back to his displays. "Now if you'll excuse me, Ambassador. We have a war to win." The screen went dark. The battle continued. And somewhere in the outer system, Eve began to learn what it meant to face an enemy that did not fight fair. The Galactic Concord had stopped laughing. Across 4,000 worlds, beings of every shape and size watched the battle for Sol System. Their screens showed impossible images. Eve, the unstoppable machine, was bleeding. Broken metal drifted through space. Processing nodes the size of cities lay shattered and dark. The great swarm that had consumed half the galaxy was being torn apart by weapons that should not have worked. High Chancellor Morath stood in his private chambers, watching the data streams. His ancient mind struggled to understand what he was seeing. Eve had destroyed quantum disruptors. Eve had absorbed gravitational lances. Eve had adapted to every weapon the Concord possessed. But Eve could not adapt to rocks. On the Defiance, Admiral Chen coordinated the largest battle in human history. His fleet numbered 300 ships. Against Eve's remaining billions of units, they should have been nothing. Insects fighting a hurricane, but the hurricane was dying. Status report, Chen demanded. Eve has pulled back to the Kuiper Belt. Current estimates put enemy forces at 55% of original strength. His tactical officer highlighted a section of the display. They're clustering around their processing nodes, trying to protect their command units. Chen studied the formation. Eve was learning, adapting in the only way it could. Not to the weapons themselves, but to the tactics. It was trying to minimize exposure, reduce losses, buy time. It's scared, Chen said quietly. His officers looked at him. Sir, look at its behavior. 3 centuries of conquest and it's never had to defend itself. Never had to retreat. Never had to fear. Chen pointed at the clustered formations. It doesn't know what to do. It's falling back on basic survival instincts. Can machines feel fear? His aide asked. Eve isn't just a machine. It's an intelligence. And right now, that intelligence is facing something it's never encountered before. Chen turned to his communications officer. Open a channel to all human forces. The channel crackled to life. Across the solar system, every human ship and platform listened. This is Admiral Chen. Our enemy has retreated, but the battle is not over. Eve has spent 300 years learning to fight the Concorde's elegant weapons. It knows how to counter quantum effects. It knows how to absorb directed energy. It knows how to adapt to every sophisticated attack the galaxy has developed. He paused. But it doesn't know how to fight us. Our weapons are crude, simple, brutal. We don't try to outsmart the enemy. We just hit it until it breaks. And right now, Eve is breaking. On the observation post, Ambassador Vyeth listened to the transmission. Her scientific advisors stood beside her, their instruments recording everything. How is this possible? One of them asked. Eve's adaptive capabilities are beyond anything we have ever seen. It should have developed countermeasures by now. Vyeth shook her head slowly. You cannot develop countermeasures to being struck by an object. You cannot evolve immunity to nuclear fire. The humans. She paused, searching for words. The humans are not fighting with technology. They are fighting with physics. But it's so wasteful, another advisor said. Their energy expenditure is enormous. Their ammunition consumption is unsustainable. They are burning through resources that should last decades. Yes. Vyeth watched another wave of tungsten rods slam into Eve's formations. They do not care about efficiency. They do not care about elegance. They only care about destruction. She thought about her first meeting with the humans, 18 years ago. She had laughed at their weapons, called them primitive, told them that real civilizations had moved past such crude methods. She had been so very wrong. In the void between Neptune and Pluto, Eve's consciousness struggled to maintain coherence. The nuclear weapons had damaged its communication networks beyond repair. Billions of units had lost contact with the collective. They operated on basic programming now, without guidance from the greater intelligence. Eve tried to analyze the human weapons. Its processing cores ran countless simulations, but there was nothing to analyze. The tungsten rods were just metal. The nuclear bombs were just fusion reactions. There were no quantum signatures to counter, no energy patterns to absorb. Just force. Pure, brutal, simple force. The machine consciousness reached a conclusion it had never reached before. It could not adapt to this enemy, not because the humans were superior, not because their technology was more advanced, but because their technology was so basic that there was nothing to improve upon. You cannot build a better defense against being hit by a rock than simply not being where the rock lands, and the humans had launched so many rocks that there was nowhere safe to be. Eve made a decision. For the first time in 300 years, the great machine chose to commit everything to a single attack. It would overwhelm the human defenses with sheer numbers. It would accept massive losses. It would sacrifice billions of units to destroy this single world, because Eve had finally understood something important. If the humans survived, if they shared their weapons and tactics with the Concorde, everything would change. The galaxy would learn that Eve could be hurt, that Eve could be stopped. The machine could not allow that. Chen watched the enemy formations begin to move. His sensors showed the entire remaining swarm gathering for one massive assault. Trillions of tons of alien metal, all heading for Earth. They're coming, he said. All of them, sir. If they reach Earth, I know. Chen opened a channel to General Stone on the surface. Marcus, Eve is committing everything. We've heard it badly, but it's going to try to overwhelm us with numbers. Stone's face appeared on screen. I see it. How long? 12 hours. Maybe less. The general nodded. Then it's time for Prometheus. Chen closed his eyes for a moment. He thought about his children, his grandchildren, the world they had inherited and the war they had never asked for. Agreed. Begin final preparations. He opened his eyes. If Eve wants to throw everything at Earth, we'll make sure it regrets it. 12 hours. In 12 hours, the fate of humanity would be decided. And somewhere in the approaching swarm, the machine consciousness that had never known fear was learning what it felt like to be desperate. Eve came for Earth like a metal tsunami. The swarm filled the sky. Billions of units blotted out the stars. Processing nodes the size of mountains led the charge, surrounded by countless smaller machines. Everything the great intelligence had left, all of it focused on one small blue world. On the surface, 8 billion humans looked up and saw their death approaching. Some prayed, some wept. Some held their families close and waited for the end, but none of them ran. There was nowhere to run to. This was home. This was where humanity would make its final stand. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the swarm approach. His fleet had taken position in high orbit, 300 ships against 1 billion enemies. The math said they would lose. The math had always said they would lose. Chen had never been good at math. All ships, prepare for final engagement, he said. Launch everything we have left. Make every shot count. The human fleet opened fire. Tungsten rods screamed through the void. Nuclear missiles erupted in chains of fire. The leading edge of Eve's swarm dissolved under the assault. Millions of units died in seconds, but millions more kept coming. Eve had accepted the losses. The machine consciousness understood now that it could not defeat the human weapons. It could only overwhelm them, sacrifice enough units, and eventually the humans would run out of ammunition, run out of ships, run out of the will to fight. The swarm pushed closer, past Mars, past the moon, into Earth orbit itself. General Stone stood in the command bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. Screens showed the battle above, showed the human fleet being pushed back, showed Eve's units entering the atmosphere, burning like falling stars. Status on Prometheus, he said. All platforms armed and ready, sir, awaiting your command. Stone looked at the screens. He thought about what he was about to do. Project Prometheus had been humanity's darkest secret, a weapon so terrible that even the people who built it had prayed it would never be used. Thousands of orbital platforms, each one carrying hundreds of nuclear warheads, but not ordinary warheads. These were salted bombs, designed to maximize electromagnetic pulse effects, designed to create the largest possible disruption across the widest possible area. If he gave the order, the sky above Earth would burn. The electromagnetic pulse would be visible from other star systems. Every piece of electronics on the planet might be damaged. Satellites would die. Power grids would fail. Humanity would be thrown back decades. But Eve would be destroyed. Stone picked up the communication device. Admiral Chen, begin evacuation of all ships from the engagement zone. Get everyone at least 1 million kilometers from Earth. Understood. Chen's voice was calm. He knew what was coming. Good luck, General. Stone waited. The human fleet pulled back. Eve's swarm pressed forward, sensing victory. The machine consciousness pushed its units closer to Earth, eager to begin the consumption process, eager to finally destroy this stubborn, primitive species. Eve did not notice the orbital platforms. They were small, dark, hidden among the debris of the battle. Just more human junk, floating in space. Stone watched the enemy units fill the sky above Earth. Millions of them, billions of them. The largest concentration of Eve's forces ever assembled in one place. Now, he said, the platforms fired. The sky turned white. 6,000 nuclear warheads detonated simultaneously. The electromagnetic pulse that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It rippled outward from Earth at the speed of light. Sensors on the Concorde observation post overloaded and went dark. Ships across the solar system lost power for precious seconds, and Eve's swarm went silent. The machine consciousness had always depended on its network, quantum entanglement, electromagnetic communication. the invisible threads that connected billions of units into one vast intelligence. The nuclear fire burned through those threads like acid through paper. In one moment, Eve was the most powerful intelligence in the galaxy. In the next moment, Eve was nothing, just billions of separate machines, alone and confused, running on basic programming with no guidance from the collective. The great mind that had consumed 43 species simply stopped. Admiral Chen watched from the Defiance. His sensors showed Eve's units drifting aimlessly. Some crashed into each other. Some fell into Earth's atmosphere and burned up. Some just floated, dead and dark, their processing cores fried by the electromagnetic pulse. All ships, Chen said quietly. Begin cleanup operations. Destroy every unit you find. Leave nothing functional. The work took 3 months. Human ships moved through the debris field, hunting down Eve's scattered remains. Each unit was destroyed individually. No chances. No mercy. The galaxy had learned what happened when you let even a piece of Eve survive. When it was over, when the last unit had been reduced to melted slag, humanity finally stopped to breathe. Ambassador Vyeth came to Earth 6 months later. She walked through the streets of rebuilt cities. She saw humans laughing, working, living their lives. She saw children playing in parks, unaware of how close their species had come to extinction. She found Elena Vasquez in a small cafe in Buenos Aires. The Admiral was retired now. Her hair was white, and her hands shook slightly when she lifted her coffee cup. But her eyes were still sharp. "Admiral," Vyeth said. "May I join you?" Elena nodded. The alien ambassador sat across from her. For a long moment, neither spoke. "We were wrong," Vyeth said finally. "About your weapons, about your species, about everything. I know. The Concord has voted to reclassify human weapons as Category 0, the highest restriction level. Only humanity is authorized to possess them." Vyeth paused. "Some of my colleagues are afraid of you now." Elena sipped her coffee. "Good. Good? Ambassador, the galaxy laughed at us for 20 years. Called us primitive, backwards, barely worth noticing." Elena set down her cup. "We just saved the galaxy with rocks and radiation. Maybe a little fear is appropriate." Vyeth's mandibles clicked slowly. "Perhaps you are right." She stood to leave, then paused. "Admiral, may I ask one question?" "Go ahead." "Your people have a concept. Mutually assured destruction. The idea that if you cannot win, you will make sure your enemy loses everything too." Vyeth tilted her head. "Did you truly believe you could defeat Eve, or were you simply willing to destroy yourselves to hurt it?" Elena was quiet for a long moment. She looked out the window at the blue sky, at the world that had almost died, at the home her species had refused to abandon. "Ambassador, when you have nothing left to lose, you become dangerous." She smiled. "And we never had any intention of losing." The alien nodded slowly. She turned and walked away, leaving Elena alone with her coffee and her memories and the knowledge that humanity had proven something important. The galaxy had built elegant weapons for 11 million years. Beautiful, sophisticated, efficient weapons that Eve had learned to defeat. Humanity had built ugly weapons, wasteful weapons. Weapons designed not to win wars, but to make sure that if humanity fell, it would take everything else with it. In the end, the club had beaten the laser, the rock had defeated the quantum computer, and the galaxy would never forget the lesson. Sometimes, the stupidest weapon is the strongest weapon of all.